I don't know who needs to hear this, but your nervous system will be safe to receive on semen retention. And I want to welcome you all to another Semen Retention Sunday episode here on the Regal Change account. I've got my Sunday morning coffee going, so I think it's time to get into this topic. It's important to recognize that semen retention is about reclaiming your nervous system and being able to not necessarily control your impulses, but to recognize that sometimes your impulses will be used against you in the society, in the matrix, the construct, the simulation, whatever you want to call it, that we live in. And this construct that we live in is designed to literally siphon your energy. And this makes you really exposed in the spiritual domain as well as the physical domain, where physically you don't even know that you're caught up on the wheel, like a hamster on a wheel, right? You don't even realize that you're in these moments. And the best way that you can move forward is to recognize that your past is not a link to the present moment. You've spent your time, rather than invested your time, likely into how you maneuver through life and through time. But your perception of time drastically changes. And it's because you're reclaiming your nervous system. When you reclaim your nervous system, things are a little bit more calm, things are a little bit more stable, and you don't have to necessarily rely on people to tell you what to do and how to do it. You just know what to do and how to do it. You trust that instead of the orientation of what other people think you ought to be oriented by, instead of trusting that, you trust the actual process in of itself. It's much like you are on a canoe in a river, and instead of trying to paddle against the current, or you're trying to make sure that you go a certain way down the river, instead of doing that, you just let yourself go with the flow, but not in a passive way. Okay, a lot of people, when I say go with the flow, or when other people say go with the flow, they think that this is a passive behavior. This is not a passive behavior. It's more of a understanding of the self-referential patterns of life, and how the self ultimately is a certain type of narrative that we play in our own mind. Doesn't make it less real, but not always are those narratives going to be true. Like, for example, one of the thought algorithms that you might have when you're on semen retention and you're getting out of this thought algorithm of, oh, I'm not enough, or, I'm not lovable, or, anything like that. Or if you say, oh, I should feel shame for this sexual expression. If you say to yourself, oh, I should feel this, or I should feel that, or I have to, or I'm not, or I'm this, or I'm that, and in reality, with the truth, because there's truth in the reality, but there's not always there's a reality in truth sometimes, but sometimes the reality is that elusive thoughts and lies that we tell ourselves, those can be real as far as the lies go. It's a real experience, rather, but it's not true. And so you must basically brainwash yourself into believing that you're okay. And after you get through the belief and after you get through the faith of that, then you get to a place of knowing that you never really had to believe or have faith all along. But it's a process, and you can't skip that process. You just can't. There's no secret formula other than how much can you be devoted into letting go of who you think you are and to living who you know you are. But what does that even mean, right? What does that even mean? Well, it means to be constantly renewed by your own mind and to be aware that grace is a gift. And in the book of Ephesians, it talks about this, how the grace is a gift. And I see, depending on how you look at grace, as the acceptance of life in of itself, really, and that grace is really running the whole show. The way that I see this cosmic consciousness and reality / simulation is that, think about this, right? Think about how we never really truly understand how to be so individualized to the point in which we don't need people. Now, is that a hardwiring of our biology? And if so, then we can say that God made it that way. But what does that even mean? Well, why would he make it that way? The way that I see God at this point is that God is not necessarily an entity or a being, it's the being of being itself. And what I mean by this is that God is the reason why being exists at all. Now, if you want to view that as a creator, or if you want to view that as a programmer, it depends on your perspective. Again, it depends on how you see the existence, because there is objective truth, but how we see that objective truth is dependent upon our own experience. And so depending on also how much you've been able to let go or embody. And that's really what this is about. You can't really be in this life without being a trusted participant in it. This is something that many of all of the antagonists in certain stories, think about like the Green Goblin in Spider-Man. The Green Goblin wanted to embody with Oscorp. He wanted to be a trusted participant with the company, right? And then they said, "Oh, you're out, Norman, you're out." And he was like, oh yeah, I'm out, am I? And then he kills him, right? He kills him. What exactly is that in regard to the Jungian shadow? Well, in the Jungian shadow perspective, what that is that the shadow is emerging because it's been repressed for so long that when it's rejected, now the full expression of it is activated and it consumes the psyche. So it consumes, and in a way, I guess Osborn in the Spider-Man movie with the Green Goblin, he's kind of like Gollum to a degree, where his precious becomes his desire for revenge. And so he has those split personalities between Osborn and the Green Goblin. And because Osborn is kind of like Smeagol in a way, where he's kind of meek and, I don't want to hurt anybody. And then it goes into like, full on bipolar mode, where Green Goblin and Gollum, kill people and are willing to kill people to get what they want, which is their precious. And the Green Goblin, he gives Spider-Man a choice, right? He gives Spider-Man this choice that, well, if you, because he doesn't take off the mask originally in the movie, and which I think is kind of respectful on the Green Goblin's part, but he's basically giving Spider-Man like, look, in spite of everything you've done for these people, eventually they're going to hate you. Why bother? Well, he's projecting his own experience onto Spider-Man because he views himself to be similar in regard to Spider-Man. And so the hero and the, let's say, the villain, again, this is a narrative, right? This is a narrative. So it's the story that we're telling ourselves. And the reason why this is so important to understand is that the narrative that we tell ourselves is going to impact our nervous system. And so if you're telling yourself, well, and it's going to impact your environment. So if you're telling yourself, oh, I'm not enough or I'm not lovable, and your nervous system will start to respond in that way, whether you want it to or not. And so there's the two types of nervous systems. There's the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for digestion and calmness. And then there's the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight. So we've got the parasympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. And most people are stuck in their sympathetic nervous system, their fight or flight. And lust is the energy that thrives in the sympathetic nervous state, because you kind of have to be busy. You have to do something. And, the amount of swag that you have is going to be dependent upon your calmness of your nervous system. Truly. So the main aim here is that, well, how do you calm yourself down enough to have your dream life? Well, you calm yourself down enough to have your dream life by just doing, you have to let whatever patterns are trying to complete themselves in your life be completed. And so we, operating in this bio digital program, for all intents and purposes, in order to not be linked to the past, we have to let those timelines be completed. And when I say that, I'm providing a metaphysical structure. And I'm not saying that this is the only way to view life. I'm not saying that this is the way to view life. I'm saying that this is a way to view life that has helped me tremendously. And it is complex, but not really at the same time. Once you understand the metaphysical structure, it's very easy to navigate through time in timelessness. Because what you're doing when you're operating from a place of timelessness inwardly is that you're not letting the concepts or the narratives sway you one way or another. Because it's really interesting how, again, the hero is the trusted participant of life, whereas the villain is the one who rejects life altogether. And I understand why a lot of people would want to reject this life. I understand why there is a lot of people who are, men specifically, who are becoming villains. And semen retention is going to provide you an avenue. It's not the only way. Okay, you're not going to get to enlightenment or think that I'm enlightened now that I've gone 30 days of semen retention. Now I'm enlightened. That's not the way that this works. I mean, you don't even have to be on semen retention in order to be enlightened. However, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be, or that not doing so will not help you, because obviously you don't really need to do anything. You don't have to do anything in this life. You really don't. If this whole thing is a biodigital program, considering this possibility without accepting it, if this whole thing is a biodigital program of some kind, well, then that means that you're going to do what you're going to do, and you're going to do something because you want to do it. And you can question about free will here and whatnot, and I don't think the question really even matters. There is no inflection point in which free will is really free will, because to believe it would be to deny free will, and yet to not believe it would be to dismiss your own sense of choice. So it's a paradox. And you might ask, well, then how does believing in free will deny free will? Well, because if you have to believe in it, you have to believe it. Oh, I believe in free will. It's okay, well, I believe that, the common phrase that I use for this type of stuff is, I believe the sky is purple. I can believe whatever I want. You can believe whatever you want. It doesn't make it a data point. Belief is not a data point. It is a function of being. And so we have to maneuver as human beings, we have to maneuver on the line between, okay, well, how do we recognize our spirituality and our biology without becoming too attached to either? Because if we're too enveloped into the spiritual side, we're almost going to use spirituality as a form to, and not really a form, but as an excuse to let go of the physical and deny the physical, which is not good, because that's not who we truly are. We are operating as a human being in this life, whether we want to or not. And so the question is, how do we allow the work to flow through us? And just because we are essentially biodigital AI, and I'm not saying that we're artificial intelligence, but I'm giving an analogy and a metaphor here. Just because we're biodigital AI doesn't mean that we don't have a soul. Your soul is the transcendence of patterns through time in timelessness. And that's going to be determined about like how do you determine that? How do you know what that is? Well, it's the self that transforms in timelessness. And it's the observer in timelessness. But these things can only truly be, well, they're never even going to be grasped. You're not really meant to grasp these things because you're trying to define the infinite. And anytime you try to define the infinite, you're going to miss the whole point. You're going to miss the whole point of it being infinite. That's one of the reasons why silence is one of the best teachers, is because in silence, you understand that it's just the awareness of awareness to begin with that is truly the most astounding part of this whole life. It's not who's doing what and who's believing what and who's right. It's just that there's an experience at all to begin with, and that's truly the true power that comes with this kind of understanding and this thought process. So with all that being said, I hope that this message was useful and insightful for you for the Semen Retention Sunday episode. I gotta say, there's really nothing like some coffee in the morning, man. I don't really like my coffee too strong, but there's something just about having that beverage in the morning, and just being able to sit here and share my perspective of life and semen retention. And I'm just very grateful for this divine timing, and I'm grateful for all of the people that have been showing support recently, because there's been a lot of polarization unintentionally happening on my channel, and I don't mean for this polarization to happen, but I can't not be authentic. I don't know how to not be fake. It's like I do know how, but I don't want to be for this type of stuff, because to do so would be feeling like a performance, and I'm not here to perform for you guys. I'm not here to perform for anybody, because I know that, yeah, it's a performance. This whole thing is a performance. As far as the existence goes, it's all a show, right? It's all a show, but that doesn't mean that we can't still embody what we feel or what we believe. I don't believe anything, but if you want to believe something and you want to embody it, go for it. I'm not going to judge anybody. I don't really hate anybody. I don't hate anybody. I don't judge anybody. I just simply am being at this point. I don't need to do anything, and yet I have things that I want and need to do. And I know that as a human being, I'm going to have certain needs and desires, and I just accept that, because that's what I am and who I am. Like, what I am in this body is not really who I am in my soul. And many people are going to misunderstand you, and they're going to try to take your swag, and they're going to be intimidated by your own calmness, and they're going to be confused by why you're changing, right? Like if you're capable of updating your patterns of thought or thought algorithms because you have seen contradictory data points to your previous beliefs and you don't update those, who's more arrogant or ignorant? You know, who's who exactly in that situation? Because to me, if I'm operating at the very base fundamental level, there is no who. There is no who is who. When you ask the question, who am I? Like, how do you really know you exist? It's only through your awareness of the story you tell yourself, or the feeling in your body. I enjoy this coffee because my taste buds, and I'm not reducing anything, I'm just saying my taste buds and my body respond really well to the taste, to the perceived taste of coffee. Because if I didn't have this meat suit, I wouldn't really need coffee, right? Like I wouldn't want it. I don't really need coffee to begin with, but I want coffee. I love coffee. And there's something about the experience of tasting coffee that is bringing me joy. And as a human being, I can experience those emotions. If I were truly an AI, I couldn't experience these emotions. Well, at least not to the degree in which like maybe AI will be capable of emotion down the line, but for now, we don't really know any AI that experience emotion the way that humans do. But this doesn't mean that humans are better or worse. It just means that humans have different types of data points of their experience that can determine certain things about their experience. And semen retention it's been a ride. You know, I'm coming up on the 4-year mark in May of this year, 2026, and it is March 8th of 2026 filming this. And the fact of the matter is that this life is just so beautiful and so awe-inspiring, and yet at the same time, it's just, it's all meaningless, but you get to create the meaning based off of your own experience. And that's the cool part. Like, that's super cool. This basically is a real life video game. And that's awesome. Like, that's super cool. We get to experience life in a completely different way than most animals that we know of in this existence. And who's to say who's who and who's what? I mean, who is who? Anyway, maybe that's why Dr. Seuss always called the who's down in Whoville who's. It's like, well, who exactly are the who's? But anyway, I appreciate you guys taking the time to be with me. I hope you yourself enjoyed this. We went through a lot of different types of spiritual nuggets in here. But I hope that you all have a blessed day. Stay blessed. Peace. And until next time.